Hey, I'm Hallie, and we are coming on the air with Donald Trump about to be in the air, maybe at some point, to take off. You see the plane on the tarmac now to Georgia for his fourth arrest in 5 months. This is a live look now at Newark Airport in New Jersey, where sources, a.k.a. our eyeballs, are telling us that it is raining, right? That seems to be pushing back his ETA in Atlanta, this weather issue where police are getting ready. You've got barricades there set up, and where, by the way, it's apparently also going to rain. Before he heads here, the notorious Rice Street Jail, that's where he's going to be booked on charges. He tried to break the law to overturn the legitimate results of Georgia's 2020 election. So how is this going to go? How's this going to look? Here's what we know. His motorcade will go through the gate. Chances are we're not going to see him. Once he's inside, he'll get processed. That means he gets his fingerprints taken. We don't know about a mugshot yet. We can't say for sure. We know his co-defendants have had mugshots, but that hasn't happened for Mr. Trump's other arrests. Could this time. Whole thing could go pretty quick, or maybe not. Some of these have gone for like an hour and a half, so TBD on that front. It's possible Mr. Trump could speak to the reporters traveling with him at some point on his journey back to New Jersey. Who knows? But he's already had plenty to say in fundraising emails and on his social media platform. Remember, the former president faces 13 charges here, many under a statute that's typically reserved for mob bosses. Add that to the 40 charges he faces on a different case in Florida, 34 separate other charges in New York, and then 4 in D.C. Do the math, that's more than 90 total. It all comes as he's shaken up his legal team, firing his lead lawyer just hours before this appearance to be booked in jail, replacing him with this guy, Steven Sadow. All of it part of an historic day that perhaps feels routine by now, but given the scope, it's anything but. We have live coverage from every angle. Blaine Alexander is live for us in Atlanta. Laura Jarrett is joining me here in New York, and Ryan Nobles is live in Washington. Blaine, I want to start with you. Tell us where we are as we're coming on the air this hour.
Well, Hallie, we are expecting the former president to come here, specifically here to this entrance right here behind me, in fact, to surrender later on this evening. So I want to give you just kind of a look at the mood around the area. You certainly covered all of the details, the ins and outs, but what you can't see from where I'm standing right here is what it looks like and what it feels like around the jail right now. One, it's very hot outside. That's relevant. That's important because we're seeing a growing number of Trump supporters kind of parading and crowding around the jail throughout the day. Not as much where I'm standing, but over toward the main entrance of the Rice Street Jail, we've seen nearly 40 or 50 people who are out there with signs, out there with flags, a couple of people driving through in Trump-branded vehicles. I've seen even a Trump 2020 bus pull by our live shot several times. So it's very clear that a number of people have come out here to show their support of the former president. Now, it's also important to point out that there are some anti-Trump protesters as well, some people who feel that these charges are very fitting. Here's what a few people told us when I went out to talk to them about why they're standing out here. Take a look.
Trump is actually putting himself in harms to protect the people.
We feel like President Trump is being railroaded and he's done nothing wrong. They've worked for how many years to try to find something that they can't.
If they can persecute a presidential candidate, a frontrunner, then anyone can be wrongly accused of anything.
So that's the mood outside of the jail, Hallie. That combined with an incredible number of just media news coverage right out here. But then inside, here's what we're expecting to see. We're expecting to see him be fingerprinted, possibly have a mugshot, and likely stay inside for less than an hour, Hallie.
Yeah, it is a scene, Blaine, any way you describe it here. And it has already been a scene for much of the day. That's because we've seen another pretty significant booking here, that of former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. He came and went, no cameras saw him, right? But he has been somebody who's been active in fighting his arrest. And in this indictment, it lays out his role as, in many ways, the facilitator of these meetings, of these conversations, to overturn the legitimate results of the election.
In fact, the most active fighter in these charges so far of the 19 co-defendants we've seen so far, at least from a legal standpoint in terms of filings. And he really is the highest ranking surrender that we have seen so far, as well as the former White House Chief of Staff. So, yeah, we really had this surreal moment where we saw a mugshot emerge from him, booking information from him. We know that he was released on $100,000 bond. But it also comes after he had asked a judge to bar the DA from arresting him. Remember, DA Fani Willis made it very clear that if he and any of the other 18 defendants didn't come down here and surrender by tomorrow's noon deadline, she would not hesitate in issuing arrest warrants. So, that request from a judge was denied. He had no choice but to show up here, and he did that today, Hallie.
Blaine Alexander live for us in Atlanta. Blaine, I'm going to ask you to stay close to a camera because we've been looking live at not the Spirit Airlines plane that you saw, bright yellow there at Newark, but the plane right behind it. There it is, Donald Trump's private jet. That is what is going to take him to Georgia, where he will be booked, as Blaine has laid out. Laura Jarrett is following all of this from the legal perspective for us. And Laura, let's start with Donald Trump here because he's heading to Georgia with a new attorney, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. It sort of feels like a little bit late in the game to be getting a new attorney, but there's something of a pattern we've seen. Remember in the classified documents case, way back on that arraignment, after he was indicted, he got a whole new legal team. And so we don't know whether this attorney was pushed out or why the strategic shift this late in the game. But it does appear that the former president has a habit of switching his attorneys up there is somewhat late. As for this attorney that he's now hired, Stephen Sadow, this is somebody who has a lot of experience with RICO, the racketeering act that the former president's been charged with, someone who has suggested, in his view, that it's been abused in the past. He's also somebody who is no stranger to high-profile cases, Hallie. He's somebody who's represented Usher and other rappers, somebody who's doing a RICO trial for a rapper right this moment. And so it's just interesting that this is the person he's chose to represent him in this case.
There's also, as we're taking a look here, and again, the former president getting ready to take off from Newark, not too far from where we're sitting here in Midtown Manhattan. It is cloudy. The weather's kind of gross here. Apparently, it's also gross down in Atlanta. We'll see how that affects his timing for the evening as the former president has chosen to turn himself in, right? He kind of got to pick. He had to do it Friday before noon, but this was his decision to come in at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? He tried to choreograph this and script this down to the minute so that he would have it right sort of in the middle of television prime time, but you can't fight the weather, and there's only so much you can script, obviously, in a situation like this. It just reminds you of how much this is so different in so many ways that somebody gets sort of, this type of treatment. On the other hand, this is different than the other times we have seen him formally arrested and turning himself in. Fulton County Jail is not like going into a federal courthouse. This is a place that you do not want to hang out. This is a place that is under federal investigation for how they treat their inmates.
It's an active jail.
It's an active jail. This is not a pleasant experience. And part of the reason we don't even know how long he's going to be in there is because it's not as if they clear out the jail. If there's some big case that comes in with a multi-defendant case and everybody gets swept up beforehand, he might have to wait a little bit. And so it's a little bit of a moving target. We don't even know how long the processing is going to take because they're not making special dispensation for him, even though, of course, they're making special dispensation for him because he has Secret Service protection. He's not going to sit in a cell like in general pop like everybody else, right?
There have been this flurry of legal filings, too, that we've seen over the course of the last week or so. Some of it can feel incremental, but there is an interesting one in particular today, and that is one of these defendants, Kenneth Chesebro, who's asking for a speedy trial. So the judge now has moved up the court date to October just for him, right? That doesn't mean that Donald Trump's going to end up in trial in October. It doesn't mean the other 18 co-defendants, or 17, I guess, will end up in trial in October. Is that the upshot, basically?
Yes,
here?
and in some ways, Ken Chesebro, to remind everybody, he's one of the architects of the scheme to put forth pro-Trump fake electors to the National Archives, to Congress. That was his role. He writes a whole bunch of memos to that effect. He almost goes off script saying, I want to have a speedy trial. I'm ready to go right now. Fani Willis, the DA, says, all right, fine,
sure,
let's do it.
Yeah, let's go.
Former president is saying, wait, hold up. I'm not ready to go to trial, and is the one who has sort of signaled, if you would do that, I'm going to ask to separate off from that case, which is something you see, especially when you have 19 defendants. It was never going to be 19 go all together, but it appears, at least for right now, this is scheduled to go to trial in October as it relates, again, just to Chesebro. Does that mean that date is going to stick? No, I don't think that any of these cases are going to go to trial in October. But under the law, under Georgia law, when you ask for a speedy trial, it's your constitutional right. It sets off a whole clock. So they had to sort of get the wheels in motion for that. Doesn't necessarily mean that that date will stick for Chesebro or anybody else for that matter.
Laura Jarrett, thank you so much. I know we're going to be talking a couple of times here throughout the evening.
Yes.
Appreciate it. You are taking a live look here. Newark on the left, Atlanta on the right. I want to get to Ryan Nobles now in Washington, another place where there is obviously a nexus to all this, because, Ryan, when you look at the politics of it all, former President Trump, to the point that Laura was just making, would presumably love to see his trial delayed until after the 2024 election. What we are seeing now is him getting backup from his allies, not just in sort of the wider GOP circle, but specifically from his allies on Capitol Hill, where the House Judiciary Committee is now saying, hey, guess what, Fani Willis, if you're going to go and indict Donald Trump, we are going to investigate you.
Yeah, and this is a pattern that we've seen over the course of these multiple indictments that Donald Trump has found himself under, where he then gets backup and cover from members of the House Republican caucus, most specifically the House Judiciary Committee and their chairman, Jim Jordan. And Jordan, following the exact script that he followed after Trump was indicted in Manhattan, sending a letter to the district attorney in Fulton County, much like he sent to the district attorney in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, asking for any information that relates to the investigation with any sort of a federal connection. Now, Fani Willis is a local district attorney. She really doesn't have any responsibility to report to a federal authority of any kind. So what Jim Jordan is looking for here is any opportunity to get Congress involved. And so the big question he has is whether or not Willis has had any sort of communication or coordination with the special counsel, Jack Smith, who has, of course, brought up very similar charges to the ones that Fani Willis has brought down in Fulton County, and whether or not she's had any conversations with the Department of Justice as well. Now, there's nothing that says that she can't do that, Hallie, but she's been very clear that she's running her own investigation here, and we'll have to see whether or not she cooperates with this new investigation from House Republicans at any point. At this point, she and her office are not responding to questions about Jordan's letter.
Ryan Nobles. Ryan, thank you so much. I want to get to Vaughn Hilliard, who is live for us in Atlanta. And presumably, Vaughn, Team Trump likes getting the backup from those loyalists on Capitol Hill inside the Republican Party. And Donald Trump himself is fundraising, talking about already, right, this idea that he's going to be arrested. He says 7:30 p.m. TBD on the actual timing, given what we're seeing, obviously, live on the runway here. But the bottom line, he is set to show up in Georgia to be booked. And he and his team are looking to make some money off this, Vaughn.
Right. Money not only for campaign purposes, but also for the legal bills. About 90% of the money that has come in has gone toward the campaign. But then there's the other 10% that goes to the Save America PAC, which has been used to finance legal bills, not only for himself, but also for other defendants in the past. This Georgia case is a little different. There's 18 co-defendants now, and so far there is no indication that any of them are getting financial support from any of these allied entities or Donald Trump directly. This is a burgeoning case, not only here in Georgia, but if you look at the other three trials that that are awaiting him. And actually, in just the last few minutes, text messages went out from the Trump campaign seeking dollars. I'll just read it directly for you. Quote, from President Trump, this is my last text to you before my arrest, Patriot. I hope you'll read my personal note. And that's when he says, quote, I will never surrender our mission to save America for Donald Trump. There is funding needed not only for a political campaign, but also a legal one.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us there in Atlanta. Vaughn, thank you for standing by. We'll talk to you again throughout the evening. Obviously, you're seeing this all unfold live. We will have continuing coverage right here on NBC News Now as we get it. Keep it tuned here. But we also got a lot of other news to get to, including in the next hour, the expectation that we will hear from police in Southern California about that shooting at a landmark bar that ended in the deaths of 3 people and the shooter himself. Law enforcement sources tell us the attacker was targeting his wife. She was one of the 6 people hurt. They were going through what was described as a lengthy divorce. You can see some of the aftermath here. Blood on the floor, shoes left behind, same with a purse. In the bar where this all happened, it's called Cook's Corner. It's one of the most famous biker bars in the area. It opened back in 1931. Aaron McLaughlin is joining us now. What do we know? What are the updates? And what do we expect tonight?
Well, it was around 7 o'clock last night, according to the police, when the suspect, 59-year-old John Snowling, a retired sergeant from Ventura, entered Cook's Corner. The music had just started playing. It was spaghetti night when he opened fire. According to 3 law enforcement sources, they believe he was targeting his estranged wife, Marie. Take a listen to what one eyewitness had to say. Our sister station, KNBC, interviewed a woman who said she was sitting right next to Marie when the attack happened. Take a listen.
People were getting shot, and then he turns around, and then he starts shooting at me and Marie, his wife, and all of a sudden, she hits the floor, and I didn't know if I didn't know if she got hit or if she was just ducking from the bullets.
Now, a family friend tells NBC News that Marie was shot in the attack. She was taken to the hospital. She underwent surgery last night, now in critical condition, Hallie.
Do we know anything else about the other victims who were hurt here, Aaron?
Yeah, well, 4 were killed during the attack, including the suspect. He was shot and killed by police. 6 were injured, 5 males, 1 female, presumably his estranged wife. They're in various conditions in the hospital. We are hoping to get an update in the next hour or so in that press conference that you mentioned. Meanwhile, the DA put out a statement saying thoughts and prayers ring hollow as the loved ones of the dead mourn their senseless loss of life and once again ask, why did this happen and why this time it is their loved ones who are dead. While we mourn this loss of life, we hope that all of those who were injured recover. This is a community that is shaken. Hallie.
Aaron McLaughlin live for us there out west. Aaron, we'll look for any updates from you throughout the evening. Appreciate it. Some brand new reporting into us tonight as NBC News is learning more from sources about that bombshell out of Russia, the apparent death of a top mercenary leader who marched on Moscow. With U.S. officials saying intelligence gathered so far suggests the plane allegedly carrying Yevgeny Prigozhin crashed because of sabotage. Look at that. They think the jet may have been taken down by a bomb on board, not by some kind of surface-to-air missile, although they can't say that for sure yet. At the Pentagon today, a spokesperson saying Prigozhin is probably dead. Listen.
Our initial assessment is that it's likely Prigozhin was killed. We don't have any information to indicate right now. The press reporting stating that there was some type of surface-to-air missile that took down the plane, that we assess that information to be inaccurate.
It comes as we're hearing from Russian President Vladimir Putin for the first time today about this plane crash, with Prigozhin again on the passenger list. Remember, Prigozhin tried to carry out that attempted coup just a couple months ago, as Putin is now talking about him in the past tense, but not directly confirming his death. He said, "I've known Prigozhin for a long time. He was a man of complicated fate, and he made serious mistakes in his life." That official manifest for this plane included not just Prigozhin, but a number of senior Wagner Group officials, according to a Russian opposition-linked organization. The Wagner Group, that mercenary group, today saying it's going to keep its operations going even after all of this has happened. Josh Letterman is joining us now. And Josh, this has been a story of fast-moving developments since the second we learned that this plane went down. Bring us up to speed.
Well, ironically, one person we heard from on the record about this ongoing investigation into this plane crash today, Hallie, was Vladimir Putin himself, in those comments that you mentioned where he offered condolences to the family. President Putin also said there was a preliminary investigation that was launched. He said he is waiting for the results of that. He's confident it's going to be able to get to the bottom of it. But, you know, shocker to everyone, no one is really looking to Russia for a thorough, independent investigation of this, particularly when Putin is the person widely assumed to be behind this plane crash, if it was indeed an assassination, as U.S. officials seem to be now suggesting that they were. And so it's possible we will never fully know exactly what happened in this incident. But certainly it comes as President Putin is praising the leader of Wagner, talking about what a terrific life he had, what great work he did. Putin in those comments very notably making no reference whatsoever to the attempted mutiny that Yevgeny Prigozhin and his Wagner group attempted against the Russian government just 2 months ago.
The key thing, one of the key questions that we've had, Josh, have been, of course, the obvious, right? Is Prigozhin dead or alive? We seem to be getting closer to an answer, at least from U.S. officials on that front. Did Vladimir Putin have anything to do with it? Again, you've heard from Putin now. You've explained where our reporting is. There's also another question. What happens to the Wagner Group? This is a private mercenary group, a military organization that operates, as you can see, all over the world, right? Not just, obviously, in Ukraine, fighting on behalf of Russia. What does it mean that the group now says it's going to continue operating, and can it realistically do that, Josh, with the apparent death of Prigozhin here?
Yeah, that's a huge question right now, Hallie, because it was not just Prigozhin who died in that plane crash, but according to that manifest list, also the number 2 in that organization, a guy by the name of Dmitry Utkin, a former GRU officer himself, who was believed to be kind of the operational day-to-day commander of the Wagner forces. He, too, perished, which means there's a huge vacuum of leadership atop this organization, which, remember, just 3 days ago, Prigozhin was releasing that video that he said was from Africa, where he was actually recruiting people people to join the Wagner organization to carry on their growing operations on the African continent. So we know, as you pointed out, the Wagner Group continuing to assert that they will continue their work in the future. And in fact, there are some Wagner fighters on social media who are threatening now to march on Russia, to say they want to head back to Russia to avenge the death of their leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin. That would obviously be explosive if they did that. But in the meantime, there's a lot of names being thrown around about who could potentially be a replacement for Yevgeny Prigozhin, whether the Russian government will even allow that to happen, because all of the signs from the last couple of months, ever since that attempted mutiny, was that the Russian government was trying to basically dismantle this organization, to bring it under the control and the umbrella of the Russian military. And so certainly if President Putin was hoping with this assassination, if he was behind it to try to dismantle this organization, you could see why he would have an interest in keeping it from continuing operations as it had in the past, Hallie.
Josh Letterman, lots to watch there. Josh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We are taking you live now back to Newark, New Jersey, where you see the plane carrying former President Trump leaving that airport on its way now, lifting off and heading to Atlanta. That's where the former president will be booked and processed on more than a dozen charges that he tried to illegally interfere with the 2020 election and overturn the legitimate results in that state. We expect the former president to be in the air for a little bit, but we're going to have live coverage when he touches down in Atlanta, because that will essentially start the clock. He'll drive in his motorcade through the city, head to the Fulton County Jail, have his fingerprints taken, TBD on a mugshot. We will have coverage right here on News Now. We'll also have some coverage of some other big stories internationally and here at home, including Japan starting to release radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean, why there have been so many protests and banned seafood from others in the region. Live from Japan coming up in a sec. Plus, the DOJ suing SpaceX tonight, why they say the company discriminated against refugees in its hiring process for years. Lots to get to. We'll see you in a sec. China today banning all seafood from Japan as the Japanese government starts to release radioactive water from its Fukushima power plant into the Pacific Ocean. This is the first batch that's getting released over the next couple of weeks. You can see the process just starting up here. It is a move that is so controversial in the region and around the world, really. People have protested this whole thing. You see some of those demonstrations here because the slow release could take decades. There's concern about what it could mean environmentally, et cetera. But the Japanese government says they don't have any other option if they want to safely be able to close down this huge power plant that was wrecked back in 2011 by that big earthquake and tsunami. Janice Mackey-Freyer is joining us now. And Janice, officials say there's not anything to worry about. They say this is a safe process. It is a slow and controlled release, and it's something that has to happen. But you have seen the reaction. We have covered it on this show even before today. This has been something that the region has been bracing for.
Well, Japan's government, officials with the power company, experts have gone to great lengths over the last number of months trying to assure the public that the process that's now underway about a half-mile offshore is safe, that they are doing this in a meticulous and controlled way, that they're going to monitor levels every step of the way. The IAEA, the UN's nuclear watchdog, saying that they have studied the plan for the last couple of years, and they believe that it's going to have a negligible impact on people's health and the environment. But it's still a lot of uncertainty here, and we've seen the reaction across the region, protests in Hong Kong, South Korea, here in Japan, and the fiercest opposition coming from China. Officials there condemning what Japan is doing as a selfish and irresponsible act. They immediately slapped a ban on all aqua products from Japan, that's fish and seafood, and that is a huge blow economically to the fisheries industry here, which is now afraid that Japan's image is never going to recover.
Can you talk about the timing, Janice? Why now?
The timing is because for the last number of years, this water has been used to cool the melted fuel in the reactors, and they've been putting that water in huge storage tanks. And those storage tanks are now 98% full. They're going to hit capacity by March of next year. So the water has to go somewhere, and they've evaluated all the options. They say that this is the only way that they can do it, that they can discharge the water to clear out these tanks so they can continue with the process of decommissioning this ruined nuclear plant. It's going to happen slowly. It's going to take 30 or 40 years. There is bound to be more opposition. Already, Japan's government has been asking Beijing to repeal that ban on seafood and fish products in order to help the industry here. So there are also going to be a lot of politics at play as this plays out.
Very
Hallie.
clearly. Janice McAfee live for us there from Fukushima, Japan. Thank you so much. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Justice Department is suing SpaceX today over allegations the company discriminated against refugees and asylum seekers when it was hiring people. The lawsuit says between 2018 and 2022, SpaceX wrongly claimed that certain laws limited its hiring to only American citizens and permanent residents, and that out of 10,000 hires at SpaceX, only 1 was an asylum seeker. The lawsuit says that only happened after the company was notified of the investigation. SpaceX, which of course is owned by Elon Musk, has not responded to NBC's request for comment so far. Number 2, more than 65 police officers in Pittsburgh are on temporary paid leave after that hours-long shootout we told you about yesterday. It ended in the death of the suspect. Officials say this leave, essentially, is part of protocols for the department. Several of the officers will have to go through some psychiatric evaluations before going back to work. Number 3, FIFA, now opening an investigation into the president of the Spanish Soccer Federation. Remember, we told you how Luis Rubiales is being criticized for kissing a player on the lips during Spain's Women's World Cup celebration. Rubiales has said he made a mistake, but FIFA says what he did could violate its code. Number 4, Variety reporting tonight that a man was arrested on Long Island today, apparently after going door to door, telling people he was looking for Drew Barrymore's house. He's reportedly the same person who approached Barrymore and Renee Rapp on stage in New York earlier this week, yelling, "You know who I am." A rep for Barrymore had not yet responded to Variety's request for comment. You can see that moment on stage there. Number 5, the Barbie movie, hitting $575.5 million at the box office domestically. That means it is now the highest grossing movie of the year. Sorry, Super Mario Brothers. It's getting closer to the global box office number 1, too. It's made over $1 billion so far, just $50 million short of Mario. The Barbie movement continues. Still to come here on the show. While President Trump heads to Atlanta for his arrest, his Republican opponents are trying to build momentum after that debate overnight. We're going to have the latest today, new comments from the candidates and what we're hearing from voters. Plus, really bad weather in the Midwest is leaving parts of Michigan and Ohio underwater with even more storms on the way. We'll take you there live coming up. Live look here outside the Rice Street Jail in Georgia. That's on the left side of your screen, where at some point in the next couple of hours, Donald Trump is expected to surrender in his 4th indictment in 5 months. We just saw his plane take off from New Jersey in just the last couple of minutes. You watched it live right here. So we know where Donald Trump will be tonight, as his opponents in the Republican primary are gaming out where they should be next. That's after the first primary debate in Wisconsin last night. With a lot of people now today talking about Vivek Ramaswamy, the relative unknown just a couple months ago, whose super PAC today is out with a new ad talking about his platform, saying he's created what they describe as a new American revolution. Ramaswamy, both on stage and off of it, has been hugging Mr. Trump. Chris Christie? Well, he has not. And today, despite getting booed on stage, he is leaning into these attacks against Donald Trump. In a new interview with our Garrett Hake. Watch.
You know what you're up against. You're trying to chip away with Donald Trump.
It is time to pick sides, and I've picked my side, and my side's on the side of the Constitution and on the side of law and order, and that's what made me laugh about some of the folks on the stage last night. They all say they're for law and order, but not for Donald Trump.
Garrett is joining us now. And Garrett, the day after a debate is interesting because it's in some ways like day 1 of the next phase of the campaign, right? Interestingly, tonight, the fundamentals remain a lot where they were 24 hours ago and where they've been for months, with Donald Trump, based on the polling, crushing the rest of the pack. This is even after the highest profile moment yet for these candidates.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. And I think really only Chris Christie made a serious effort to change that dynamic by going after Donald Trump on the debate stage. I suppose you could argue that Mike Pence did the same. But the reality is most of these candidates are trying to play the long game here a little bit. Survive in advance, keep building their polling, keep building their fundraising, and wait for opportunities to change the dynamic more aggressively. I mean, without Trump on the stage, there's just not as much you can do to try to take some of the shine off of him. And most of these candidates didn't even try. But I think, you know, it's funny being in the spin room afterwards last night. Every campaign declares victory. And in some sense, everybody did what they needed to do more or less tonight. You didn't see anybody completely collapse. I think especially Ron DeSantis, who had the biggest target on his back, was able to mostly stop the bleeding. And now we move on and start looking ahead to that debate at the end of September.
Who's going to be on that stage and who's not going to be on that stage?
Well, right now, Hallie, you're probably looking at 6 of the 8 candidates who are on the stage last night having already qualified. The 2 on the edges face the same problem they've always had. Doug Burgum and Asa Hutchinson still struggling to get much momentum in polling, still struggling to generate much fundraising enthusiasm. Burgum had to use a gimmick where he basically gave out gift cards. For every $1 donation, you could get a $20 gift card. He can do that. He's nearly a billionaire. It's one of the ways to kind of game the system here. But making sure that they're able to get over the hump will be challenging for candidates like Will Hurd on the graphic there, who failed to qualify for this debate. Building up more momentum, more name recognition in the intervening month without having been on the biggest stage yet is going to be a huge, huge challenge, Hallie.
So then what's the next thing, Garrett, for you and for our team there covering sort of the on-the-ground piece of the campaign? Is this just all about the sprint to Iowa, to New Hampshire, to Nevada, to South Carolina at this point?
Yeah, I mean, from talking to the other candidates and their teams over the last couple days, I think everybody's waiting to see if the circus atmosphere around the Trump arraignments and court appearances dies down enough so that traditional campaigning can break through. That's been the case a little bit in the early states. That's why you see other candidates with slightly better numbers in places like Iowa and New Hampshire than they have nationally. But if you look back over the last couple of months, it's almost been every week we've had some giant Trump-related headline, good or bad. It makes it almost impossible for anyone else to break through. If we get into a season where it's process-related, court dates moving back and forth, some of these campaigns are more optimistic that in that environment, traditional politics, remember that, might be able to make a little bit more of a difference. But again, you're tinkering around the edges right now when you've got a candidate who's 30 points ahead in most of these early polls.
Explain traditional politics, Garrett. I can't remember what that feels like. Garrett Haig, thank you very much live for us there from Milwaukee. Appreciate you. We'll talk again. Thanks. Really intense storms all across the Great Lakes are putting like 20 million people at risk tonight. Look at this, an amusement park in northern Ohio. You can see these pools of water here reflecting the storm clouds above them. Look at Michigan, streets looking like rivers. Tons of rain falling today for a couple of hours. Detroit's airport actually had to shut down access to one of its terminals because of flooding. At the same time, you have not just the water, but the heat. It is at dangerous levels for a third of the people in this country. Chicago, we're just finding out officially today, tying a record for the hottest it's ever felt like in that city. Ever in all of the time that they've been recording this kind of thing. 118 degrees. All that heat is putting a strain, of course, on things like infrastructure, things like public transportation. Schools are shut down today. They're watching for the potential for more power outages, and trains in Chicago have to slow down. They're under speed restrictions to try to keep the tracks from getting too stressed out and overheated. They don't want the tracks to expand. That would be unsafe. Jesse Kirsch is joining us now. A real impact, not just on individuals, but on the system writ large because of this heat.
Yeah, and Hallie, what we like to say here in the Windy City is that it's always a little bit cooler by the lake, and I can tell you that right now I'm not that far from the lake, and it doesn't feel much cooler. It is hot out here right now. As you mentioned, this is more than just a basic nuisance. You talk about the trains being slowed down. There have been schools shut down in this area and across the region. There have been football practices, sports put on pause right as schools are getting back in session. Just take a look at some of the other stats we have here. Power outages as well, schools in this area, and then, of course, an emphasis from cities like Chicago on cooling centers. The city also touting its splash pads, reminding people of ways that they can try to keep cool. So all of this has been going on for a couple of days here. It is really hot out, but there is some good news, at least for the Midwest, on the way. We're looking at things to cool off starting tomorrow. So fingers crossed it feels a lot better here tomorrow. But I can tell you right now, it's not just the heat, right? It's that mugginess. It's very humid. The air almost feels wet, really. It's just really gross out here right now.
Let me tell you, you don't have to talk to this Washingtonian about the humidity, Jesse. I get it. I feel it. The thing is, right now, if it's not the heat, right, it's the rain. You have those storms. You've had flooding in parts of the Midwest. We're looking at that all the way to western New York. What's the outlook on that front?
Yeah, so we're talking about 20 million people roughly in the Great Lakes region looking at severe weather this afternoon and evening. So that's something we're watching for. We know there's already been some flooding concerns in the Midwest in parts of Michigan and Ohio. There's a potential for more flooding in those two states later tonight into tomorrow. We're looking at potentially up to an inch, if not more than an inch of rain per hour. So something we're going to be keeping an eye on into the overnight hours, Hallie.
Jesse Kirsch live for us there in Chicago. Jesse, thank you. Stay cool, friend. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because it'd be tough to read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. Out of our Midwest bureau, the Ohio driver involved in a school bus crash this week has been charged with vehicular homicide. That person faces up to a year in prison after the crash killed one child and hurt 20 other people. This driver didn't crash into the bus, but he did swerve in front of it. That forced the bus driver to try to maneuver out of the way, and that's when it flipped. Out of our Southern Bureau, some pretty interesting sightings out of Florida this week. Wild monkeys roaming around north of Orlando, I should say, including right outside of Popeyes. If you see one, officials say don't try to get close to it. They're not cute and cuddly. Don't try to feed them. One of the monkeys has been identified as a member of a species out of Asia, which can apparently get pretty aggressive around food. You've been warned. And out of our Western Bureau, researchers have solved a deep-sea mystery off the coast of California, this so-called octopus garden. Look at that. It is the biggest cluster of octopi in the world. For years, scientists tried to figure out, like, what's up? Why were there so many of them right here? Apparently, they migrate there to mate and to nest. The water is deep, it's cool, so embryos develop twice as fast. More of them are likely to survive. That is like some psychedelic-looking screensaver stuff right there. We are learning now, just the last couple of minutes, that we will get the very highly anticipated results of a big union vote tomorrow morning. The United Auto Workers are deciding whether to authorize a big strike that would happen next month if talks with the big three car makers break down. Listen to this.
This is our generation's defining moment. We're fed up with the billionaire class and the corporate class taking everything and leaving us with scraps.
Not a lot of time here. The 150,000 workers could walk in 3 weeks if they can't get to a deal with Ford, GM, and Stellantis, which used to be Chrysler. Workers in Detroit have actually, look at this, these are practice pickets, just in case they do end up walking off the job. They want more money, a 46% pay raise over the next 4 years. They want a 32-hour work week for full pay, and they want better benefits. Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver is joining us now. So listen, tomorrow morning, we thought maybe today we're going to get it tomorrow morning. It's going to be a big deal when it happens, but keep in mind that a strike authorization isn't the same thing as them walking off right away. There's kind of this baked-in couple of weeks where things could change.
Yeah, and there'll be intense negotiations back and forth. If the UAW workers choose to go on strike and vote in behalf of the union, they want all those benefits. They want their piece of the profits. They've seen record profits for GM and Stellantis over the past few years. They also see this transition to EV, and they're worried, just like a lot of other industries, about this transition to new technologies, what that's going to mean for their jobs going forward.
What does it mean for the car makers if these workers do authorize a strike?
Yeah, strikes are pretty painful for car makers. Back in 2019, GM faced a 40-day strike, cost almost $10 billion or so, $3.6 billion, I should say. So there's estimates. If this goes on for something like 10 days, it could cost $5 billion to the automakers. But then there's the ripple effect, Hallie. The suppliers, the steel makers, the paint makers, all the people involved in the auto industry. A strike could be debilitating across the industry.
Have you ever seen a strike like this before? Or when was the last time that all the sort of three car makers were affected by something like this?
It's rare that you see the UAW target all three of the big U.S. automakers. This is the first time we've really seen that. Usually it's one at a time. Every 4 years, though, they go through this master agreement process to try to reach a deal, and then it kind of varies automaker to automaker. We're right now at the very tip here, at the very edge of what could be a pretty debilitating strike.
Well, let me ask you what it means, because anybody who's thought about buying a car, like a new car lately, knows those price tags are sky high. At least they feel like it. what's the consumer impact if a strike happens?
Think about it. No new supply, no new cars coming to market, less supply, already high prices and very high financing rates. Prices are likely going to go up.
Caleb Silver, great to see you. Thank you. We'll see how this goes. Coming up here on the show, we're talking about somebody who you might know because he's one of the biggest sports stars on the planet, maybe the biggest. He's had this huge injury that could cost him hundreds of millions of dollars and maybe cost baseball one of its best chances to get people psyched about the sport. We got the whole Shohei Ohtani drama coming up. Just a second. Turns out superstar Angels pitcher Shohei Ohtani will not pitch again this season after tearing a major ligament in his pitching arm. And some of the worst news, some of the most feared words for any baseball pitcher, he may need Tommy John surgery for the second time. This is, quite literally, a game changer. Ohtani was having the kind of season that made baseball relevant again to people even who aren't baseball fans. He's a 1 of 1, leading the league with 44 home runs, and he's one of the top 10 pitchers. Nobody does both, right? Like, people don't do both, let alone at the highest levels like this. And he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, set to make the most money ever. Aaron Gilchrist is joining us now. Huge injury, huge news out of the world of sports, and huge money on the line here. Aaron, explain that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you laid it out there really nicely. This is the guy in baseball right now. And to have this sort of an injury and all the uncertainty that comes with it has created this earthquake in the baseball world today as a result of what we saw on the field yesterday and these questions that surround it as a result. Ohtani walked off the field yesterday during game one of a doubleheader with this discomfort in his arm. They later found out that he had this UCL tear in his arm. And so now there are these questions about what happens at the end of the season. He won't pitch again. He may hit again. It looks like that may happen. But when free agency opens up, there were talks about the possibility of him pulling in hundreds of millions of dollars in a deal during free agency. And now there's uncertainty around that. If he's got this injury, and this is the second time he's had to deal with this particular type of injury and the possibility of surgery, as teams start to look at him and the sort of money they want to spend, $500 million has been floated out there in some reports. Is that still something, Hallie, they're going to want to do? And now there's just that uncertainty around that. But this is a tough guy we're talking about here. He played through an injury of this nature back in 2018, had the surgery later, and came back and has had the season that you've outlined here. And so, you know, people aren't counting him out. There's still a very strong possibility that we're going to see spectacular things from him in baseball going forward.
There's a reason why we're covering this story on a news show, right? Not a sports show, Aaron. And it's because he is Babe Ruth-esque, right? There hasn't been somebody like him who could hit and pitch that well since then. He is a generational player, and the potential for him to not be able to do both like he's done, this ability that has made him a mega global superstar. I mean, it's kind of a generational moment for the sport of baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the questions that surround him at this point, after having the sort of professional career that you've laid out in these 6 seasons he's been with the Angels, to be able to watch him as this two-way superstar where he can get out there and you know, throw the strikeout after and then turn around and hit and in a way that makes him
and then bash on the bat, right?
Yeah, it's just like it's something that a lot of people are like, wow, he's been the thing that's made baseball really stand out for people who maybe had softened a bit on baseball. They've loved watching him, and nobody wants to see him not shine in this sport in the way that he's been doing.
Aaron Gilchrist, we are definitely watching this one. Thank you so much for bringing that to us. Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this hour. We've got a lot more coverage picking up right now. We are starting this hour with another historic moment in a summer that has been packed with them. Former President Trump in the air right now ahead of his 4th arrest tonight, this time in Georgia. We're going to have your full guide on what to expect. Are we going to see a mugshot? Could he speak? We'll take you live to Atlanta, to New York, and to Washington with every angle. Also new late tonight, the Pentagon, for the first time saying publicly they think a powerful Russian mercenary leader is dead, with sources telling our team his plane may have been sabotaged. What else we're finding out, and the new cryptic comments that Vladimir Putin's making tonight about Yevgeny Prigozhin. Then any minute now, we expect to hear from police in Southern California about a deadly shooting in which 3 people were killed. What we know about this attack at a landmark bar. Plus, international anger over Japan's decision to start releasing radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean. Why experts and the Japanese government say there's nothing to worry about. Then it is super hot and super rainy in a super big portion of the country right now. Millions of people at risk tonight for extreme heat or severe storms. How that's affecting schools as we get into the back-to-school season, even public transportation. Hey, I'm Hallie, and we are coming on the air with Donald Trump in the air on his way to Georgia for his 4th arrest in 5 months. This is the plane that he's in, taken off from Newark Airport in New Jersey in just the last half hour after a nearly hour-long delay because of rain, because of weather that has pushed back his ETA in Atlanta. That's where police have been getting ready. The barricades set up. By the way, it's also going to rain in Atlanta, too. Former President Trump is heading here, the notorious Rice Street Jail. He's going to be booked on charges he tried to break the law to overturn the legitimate results of Georgia's 2020 election. So that is what we expect to see in the next 60, 90, 120 minutes from now. What's it going to look like? How's it going to go? Right, here's what we know so far. His motorcade will go through the gate. We probably aren't going to see him. Once he's inside, he'll get processed. He'll have his fingerprints taken. Will he get a mugshot? Well, his co-defendants have had one. Mr. Trump hasn't had a mugshot taken yet in his other 3 arrests. It could happen this time. We're watching that. This whole thing could go pretty quickly or not. Some of these have gone on for an hour and a half, these surrenders in Georgia, so TBD on that front. It is possible that Mr. Trump could talk to the reporters traveling with him at some point on his journey back to New Jersey, who knows? But he is already saying plenty in a new fundraising email with a slightly different tone. We're just getting into us. We'll talk about that in a second. Remember, the former president faces 13 charges here, most of them under a statute that's typically reserved for mafia bosses. Let's do some math. Added to the 40 charges he faces on a different case in Florida, 34 separate other charges in New York, 4 more in D.C. That's more than 90 in all. And it comes as he's shaken up his legal team, firing his lead lawyer just hours before this appearance at jail and replacing him with this guy, Steven Sadow. All of it. Part of a day that is making history. A day, a night that maybe feels routine by now, but given the scope here, it is anything but. We've got live coverage from every angle. Blaine Alexander is watching all of it live in Atlanta. Laura Jarrett is with me here in New York. We've got Ryan Nobles on Capitol Hill. And I want to start with Blaine outside that jail where Mr. Trump will be booked. He is set to land. We don't know exactly when, Blaine, but presumably at some time in the next 45 minutes to 90 minutes here. Talk us through the expectations and what you're seeing on the ground.
Well, Hallie, it's very clear that they're getting ready, increasingly getting ready for the former president's arrival. That's because security is getting tighter and tighter around this area, around the jail where I am. I've been here since before 7 o'clock this morning. Since then, we have seen the streets closed on either side. We've seen more security, more sheriff's vehicles move in, including some sheriff's deputies from other jurisdictions as well. Now, I'm told that at some point they're going to completely lock this area down and they're going to stop surrenders. They're not going to even let other people come into the jail because they are going to tighten security that much around the former president's arrival. So that's a little bit on what we're seeing outside. The other thing we're seeing outside, in addition to the security precautions, though, are a growing number of Trump supporters. We've seen just maybe a smattering of people who are anti-Trump protesters, but the vast majority of people that we've seen kind of camped out throughout the day are those who've come out to express their support of the former president. I spoke with one family who drove from Louisiana, so we're talking about a 9-hour drive to stand out here in this oppressive heat, all to show their support for the former president. Take a look.
Trump is actually putting himself in harms to protect the people.
We feel like President Trump is being railroaded and he's done nothing wrong. They've worked for how many years trying to find something they can't.
If they can persecute a presidential candidate, a front runner, then anyone can be wrongly accused of anything.
Those are just a sample of some of the voices that we're hearing out here, Hallie.
Blaine, I wonder how the sort of level of interest compares to what you've seen for the last couple of weeks that you've been staked out there on the ground. We've had a couple of significant key moments, obviously, the release of the indictment, for example. Can you give us a sense of that piece of the scene?
Yeah, and I've got to pause and show you what's happening right here behind me. There's kind of just a more show of force, just kind of underscoring what I told you earlier about more security, more people coming in. That's new. That's something that we haven't seen so far today, or at least repeatedly. In terms of interest, I mean, it's certainly high. It's certainly around these two inflection points. One, the indictment. When that happened on Monday of last week, we saw a number of people, but it certainly doesn't compare to what we've seen at the jail. We saw only a handful of just kind of, I guess, people from the general public who were out here, a couple of people who held signs, some cheering Fani Willis on, others kind of, opposing her, but certainly not what we've seen here. I asked people why it was so important to be out here, and they said that they just inherently felt what was happening was wrong. It is important to point out, though, Hallie, we saw earlier this week a similar rally in support of Fani Willis. They called it a kind of prayer vigil that happened not too far from the courthouse. They said they wanted to come out, show their support for the DA as she pursues these charges. So, again, certainly a lot of interest on both sides, Hallie.
A lot of attention, a lot of interest, of course, as it relates to the former president, because he is the former president and current Republican primary frontrunner. But he is not the only one who's been making news today. His former right-hand man, his former White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows, also surrendered. He came and went. Cameras didn't see him. He's been super active in fighting his arrest.
He's been the most active in fighting his arrest. You're absolutely right, Hallie. He's filed in terms of documents, not only fighting his arrest, but even fighting the notion of his charges being tried in Fulton County Court. He's trying to remove his case to federal court, using the argument that as a former White House chief of staff, he was acting in his federal capacity at the time of the alleged charges. Well, that's going to have a hearing on Monday. That will be figured out then. But what he had asked was, hey, in the meantime, while that's being decided, can you stop the DA from arresting me? Can I not turn myself in? A judge said, absolutely not. You have to turn yourself in. That's what we saw him do today, Hallie.
Blaine Alexander, thank you very much. Let me bring in our senior legal correspondent, Laura Jarrett, who is joining us now. So lots of back and forth, lots of interest in this moment for former President Trump. And now by his side, he has a new attorney, right?
Yes, somebody who is well-versed in racketeering cases, Stephen Sadow, who has gone on the record saying that he wouldn't be surprised, this was years ago with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, saying he wouldn't be surprised if the former president was charged in a RICO case like this, because this is sort of what prosecutors love to use.
Sadow is in Atlanta, by the way. We're just learning from reporters traveling with the
And he's a well-known criminal defense attorney. They're somebody who has plenty of experience in a case like this. You can understand why the former president wants him. A little odd to do it sort of at the 11th hour, but you know what? That's sometimes how the former president rolls, and it's, of course, his choice to have whoever he wants, and can understand why he wants to be represented by somebody who has plenty of experience.
Does it matter, the timing like this, when somebody comes in at the 11th hour in a case like this?
No, but you can see sometimes this gets used as a mechanism for delay, and we've seen this in the past where they'll say, Judge, we're just kind of getting up to speed. We need some time. There's this voluminous amount of discovery. Again, it'll all be up to the judge to decide whether to go for something like this. But certainly, where the prosecutors have the upper hand is they have been at this for literally years, right? Like, Fani Willis knows this case back and forth. So when somebody like Ken Chesebro says, hey, I want a speedy trial, she says, game on, because she's been ready.
And the reason why that piece of it is important is because when you and I talked when this indictment first came out, one of the key things was that all of these co-defendants, all 19 of them, they're part and parcel. They're a package deal. They're all hanging out in the same bucket. Well, now you have one of these co-defendants who has been plucked out. He's in a different bucket. His trial might start as soon as October, maybe. Donald Trump's like, no thanks. I don't want to be part of this anymore. That process has to play out,
and it
right?
shows where the interests can diverge. When you have this many defendants, and someone like Ken Chesebro might say, I want to be done with this, and just sort of be gambling that he can get either the case tossed out or win at trial, maybe. Whereas former President Trump has different interests at play, and it shows you sort of how they're perhaps not coordinating on all of their legal strategies. It also just shows you how unwieldy trying 19 people would was been from John. And we always knew that that wasn't going to necessarily stick. I think she charged 19 people hoping someone would flip, and that could still happen.
Laura Jarrett, we will see. Big, busy night ahead, I know, for you. Thank you so much. Let me bring in now Vaughn Hilliard as we're taking a look there on the left side of your screen of that live shot from Atlanta. Vaughn, Laura has run through the legal, Blaine has run through the logistics. Let's talk to you about the political here, because in just the last 20, 30 minutes, we're getting a new fundraising text, basically, from former President Trump. And there's a bit of a new tone here, right? He's telling people, if you are doing poorly due to the sinister people in control of our country, I'm quoting here, he says, don't even think about donating. It's almost like he's double dog daring people to raise money for him, which has been, I think, a goal of him and his team throughout all of these indictments that we've seen.
Right. It has been a goal not only because the money that are made through these donations, part of it goes to the campaign, other part goes to a PAC, which has paid for Donald Trump's legal expenses as well as others who have been at the heart of investigations in the past. It should be noted that PAC, though, is down to just a little bit of money at the time of the last FEC filing report, which would suggest that Donald Trump is in need of more legal financial support. And the other 18 defendants here, none of them have suggested that they have been guaranteed to get financial support either from Donald Trump directly or any of the political entities around him, meaning that the bills in the months and the potentially years ahead could be quite costly and a need for finances, not only for the legal end of this, but also for the fact that he is still the front runner for the 2024 nomination are necessary. And that fundraising text that just came out here in the last hour, Hallie, Donald Trump, he wrote quite clearly saying, quote, "Today I'm walking into the lion's den," going on to say, "When I walk into the jail to get wrongfully arrested, I will not cower. I will not sulk." He is bringing his supporters on this journey with him. We expect him to arrive within the next, 90 minutes to 120 minutes, Hallie, right here at the jail behind us, and ultimately even potentially get a mugshot, one that we would have little reason to doubt that he would try to capitalize on, because he has used these indictments as momentum for his political purposes and galvanizing the millions of Americans to not only donate to his campaign, but also become engaged in the political process and the campaign itself.
Vaughn Hilliard with all of the latest developments there live from Atlanta. Vaughn, thank you. Sahil Kapoor is live for us back home in Washington. And Sahil, the former president, is getting back up even late tonight from some of his allies on Capitol Hill. Explain those new developments.
Hey, that's right, Hallie. There's an overarching theme here, which is that House Republicans are stepping into a familiar role as Trump defenders when he gets into legal hot water. There's a new letter from House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan demanding a series of documents and communications from the office of DA Fani Willis. It's the same playbook they ran on Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, after he indicted Trump as part of the hush money case. Specifically, Jim Jordan is demanding three broad categories of things from Fani Willis. The first is all documents and communications relating to her office's receipt and use of federal funds. The second is all documents and communications between her DA office and the Justice Department, including special counsel Jack Smith, whose investigation and charges of Trump overlap significantly with the ones in Georgia. And the third is all communications her office has had with any federal executive branch officials. Now, this 5-page letter by Jim Jordan has a bunch of insinuations and allegations questioning Fani Willis's motivations. Let's put up a flavor of this here. Jordan writes, quote, "Your indictment and prosecution implicates substantial federal interest, and the circumstances surrounding your actions raise serious concerns about whether they are politically motivated," unquote. Jordan does not provide evidence for these claims. He gives her a deadline of September 7th, which is 2 weeks from today. Fani Willis's office is officially declining to comment to NBC News in response to this letter. And it's worth stepping back and asking, Hallie, why this letter? What specifically in the near term are Republicans trying to achieve? And I gather several things. The first is they're trying to establish their jurisdiction to escalate this investigation. Remember, Jim Jordan's committee is a federal committee. Fani Willis is a state prosecutor. Those lines of oversight are not crystal clear. The second is the government funding process is coming up. And I am reliably told that some Republicans want to slap restrictions on how state prosecutors can use federal funding as a way to force legislative reforms in this area. And the final thing is, Republicans have been making these claims about weaponization of law enforcement all the way from the federal level to the state level. They don't have evidence to back these charges up, but that hasn't stopped them from making these arguments. We heard more of them in the Republican presidential debate last night. Part of what Jim Jordan seems to be doing here is trying to hunt for more information, any evidence that he can use to backfill these claims going forward. Hallie.
Sahil Kapoor live for us there at the Capitol. Sahil, thank you. We've got some breaking news just into us tonight from the island of Maui, where officials there are just announcing they will sue the Hawaiian Electric Company more than 2 weeks since that horrific firestorm incinerated the historic town of Lahaina. In a new complaint that we are just seeing, Maui County is alleging the utility company was negligent and failed to shut off power despite very intense winds and very dry conditions. I want to bring in Steve Patterson on the ground in Maui. Steve, get us up to speed on this new lawsuit and where things go.
Yeah, so Hallie, we're still digging through the 48-page complaint, but this essentially boils down to something of a greatest hits of the nearly half a dozen lawsuits that have come before against the electric company, alleging essentially that not only did Hawaiian Electric start the fire with down-energized power lines, as you mentioned, spread out across dry brush, but that there were several years, including right up to the lead up to the fire, of mismanagement decisions and negligent decisions that also led to the fire sparking off. First of all, saying that the National Weather Service in the immediate start of this fire was talking about warnings of red flag winds, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, 45-mile-an-hour sustained winds, and that those calls were ignored because they didn't de-energize the power lines whatsoever. And so you have a situation where you have high winds, dry brush, and still the energy that is flowing through. There's been sort of a talk back about, well, that would also reduce capabilities in Lahaina, like electrified power pumps, medical equipment that could be in town, but the point still stands. Secondly, that there was years of mismanagement, going back to even the company asking for funding to help them bolster their systems against an event just like this, except they didn't act on it. I want to show you a full screen. We can put it up. This is from the complaint. It says, quote, defendants indicated that their funding requests that the risk of the utility system causing a wildfire ignition is, quote, significant, and that the defendants sought funding in part to guard against their facilities being, quote, the origin of a contributing source of ignition for a wildfire. And as you know, Hallie, this is even more significant because this is not a group of citizens coming together in a class action. This is the county itself. So this is a big deal, Hallie.
Sure is. Steve Patterson, I'm glad that you're there, able to bring us the latest reporting just coming into our newsroom in the last not even hour or so. Appreciate it. As we have been on the air now, we have heard from police in Southern California just the last couple of minutes, laying out how a shooting at a landmark bar that killed 3 people and the shooter happened when the suspect targeted his wife. 5 other people, besides the suspect's wife, were hurt. You see the aftermath. You're about to see it. Blood on the floor, a shoe left behind, same with a purse, all on the floor of the bar where it happened. Cook's Corner. It's one of the most famous biker bars in the area. It opened back in 1931. Aaron McLaughlin is joining us now. Aaron, we have just heard from law enforcement. What are the highlights?
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. The police press conference is still underway. And at the top of the press conference, officials making a point to clarify that while Cook's Corner is known as a biker bar in existence since 1931, it's also right now a family establishment. This is a local hangout where families across this close-knit community go to enjoy a meal. And last night was spaghetti night. The band just had started playing when officials say 59-year-old John Snowling, a retired sergeant, entered, apparently aiming for his estranged wife. Now, our sister station KNBC managed to interview a woman who was sitting with Marie Snowling at the time of the attack. Take a listen to what she had to say in terms of how the attack unfolded.
People were getting shot, and then he turns around, and then he starts shooting at me and Marie, his wife, and all of a sudden, she hits the floor, and I didn't know if I didn't know if she got hit or if she was just ducking from the bullets.
Now, we understand from a family friend that Marie Snowling was shot during this attack. She is now in critical condition in the hospital, having undergone surgery just last night. But we're also getting some more details about Snowling. Police in this press conference saying they believed he flew into the Los Angeles area from Ohio prior to carrying out this attack. His residence here in L.A., an additional residence that he had, is in the process of being searched, according to sources. And according to police officers at this press conference, there was a showdown in a parking lot, the upper level of a parking lot adjacent to the restaurant. He opened fire on police. Police returned fire, killing Snowling. Hallie.
Aaron McLaughlin live for us there out west. Aaron, thank you so much for that update late this evening. Appreciate it. Some brand new reporting tonight as NBC News is learning more from sources about that bombshell out of Russia, the apparent death of a top mercenary leader who marched on Moscow in an apparent coup. With U.S. officials saying intelligence gathered so far suggests the plane allegedly carrying this guy, Yevgeny Prigozhin, crashed because of sabotage. They think the jet may have been taken down by a bomb on board, not by a surface-to-air missile, although they can't say that for sure yet. At the Pentagon today, a spokesperson saying Prigozhin is probably dead. Listen.
Our initial assessment is that it's likely Prigozhin was killed. We don't have any information to indicate right now. The press reporting stating that there was some type of surface-to-air missile that took down the plane, that we assess that information to be inaccurate.
It comes as we are hearing from Russian President Vladimir Putin for the first time today about this plane crash. Again, the passenger list naming Prigozhin, who essentially tried to carry out an attempted coup. Putin talking about him in the past tense, but not directly confirming his death. He said, "I've known Prigozhin for a long time. He was a man of complicated fate, and he made serious mistakes in his life." That official manifest for the plane included the names of not just Prigozhin, but a number of other senior Wagner Group officials. That's according to a Russian opposition-linked organization. The Wagner Group, that mercenary group, today says it's going to keep its operations going even after all of this. Josh Letterman is joining us now. A lot of developments on this one, Josh. Where does it go next?
Well, hearing from President Putin today was a major development, Hallie, because there had been real silence from the Kremlin for the first 24 hours or so after this plane crash. And to hear President Putin, as you said, talk about Yevgeny Prigozhin in the past tense, maybe as close, frankly, as we are going to get to definitive confirmation that he is dead, that is going to be possible because although Putin said there's a preliminary investigation underway, and we know that authorities there are pursuing that investigation, the reality is nobody in the West or outside Russia is looking to that investigation as some type of bona fide, legitimate, thorough, and independent probe into what happened here. The widespread assumption now being echoed by some of those U.S. officials that you alluded to is that this was an assassination attempt that not only took out the head of the Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, but also the number two, the person who was operationally in charge day to day under Yevgeny Prigozhin. And so now real questions about what's going to happen to the Wagner Group next as this investigation goes forward, with the assumption now from those Western officials that you're hearing from the Pentagon that this clearly was an act of sabotage. This plane was taken down intentionally, likely, according to those officials who spoke to our colleague Courtney Kuby, by some type of explosive that was on board that plane, Hallie.
There's a question, too, Josh, as we've had so many questions, right? Is Prigozhin dead or alive? It seems like we are getting closer to an answer on that front, at least from U.S. officials. The Putin response, he's obviously responding to a degree on that today. There's also this question of what happens to this mercenary group now, because they operate not just in Ukraine, fighting on behalf of the Russians in that invasion, but all over the world. Can they continue to operate with its top leadership now apparently having been taken out?
Theoretically, they certainly can. Remember, there is big bucks associated with what the Wagner Group does around the world, particularly in countries like Africa, where they have created this kind of novel business model where they go in, protect autocrats and leaders in unstable countries in exchange for being able to basically exploit the natural resources there, be able to go in and mine for critical minerals that they can then sell for lots and lots of money. So you can see why there are major business interests behind the Wagner Group continuing to operate in Africa, in other countries. Obviously, they're now playing a major role in Belarus, where they have been welcomed in by the leader of Belarus following that attempted mutiny, now supposedly training the Belarusian forces. But the big question, who is going to lead this organization? We've seen some names start to float out there, but so far, nobody has been named as the successor for Yevgeny Prigozhin.
Josh Letterman following all of it tonight. Thank you. Lots more to come here on the show this hour, including Japan dumping radioactive water into the ocean, but they say it's safe. We'll explain after the break. Plus, why one airline could start asking passengers to get on a scale before they get on a plane. Would you get weighed to fly? We're going to get to that later in the 5 Things. China today banning all seafood from Japan as the Japanese government starts to release radioactive water from its Fukushima power plant into the ocean. This is the first batch that's going to get released over the next couple of weeks. You can see the process starting here. It is a move that is so controversial in the region. People have been demonstrating against this. They've been protesting. You can see some of those images here, with health and environmental concerns about a slow release that could take decades. But the Japanese government says they don't have any other choice if they want to be able to safely close down this huge power plant. that, remember, was wrecked back in 2011 by a big earthquake and tsunami. Janice Mackey-Freyer is joining us now. And Janice, officials say there's not anything to worry about. They say this is a safe process. It is a slow and controlled release, and it's something that has to happen. But you have seen the reaction. We have covered it on this show even before today. This has been something that the region has been bracing for.
Well, Japan's government, officials with the power company, experts have gone to great lengths over the last number of months trying to assure the public that the process that's now underway about a half-mile offshore is safe, that they are doing this in a meticulous and controlled way, that they're going to monitor levels every step of the way. The IAEA, the UN's nuclear watchdog, saying that they have studied the plan for the last couple of years, and they believe that it's going to have a negligible impact on people's health and the environment. But it's still a lot of uncertainty here, and we've seen the reaction across the region, protests in Hong Kong, South Korea, here in Japan, and the fiercest opposition coming from China. Officials there condemning what Japan is doing as a selfish and irresponsible act. They immediately slapped a ban on all aqua products from Japan, that's fish and seafood, and that is a huge blow economically to the fisheries industry here, which is now afraid that Japan's image is never going to recover.
Can you talk about the timing, Janice? Why now?
The timing is because for the last number of years, this water has been used to cool the melted fuel in the reactors, and they've been putting that water in huge storage tanks. And those storage tanks are now 98% full. They're going to hit capacity by March of next year. So the water has to go somewhere, and they've evaluated all the options. They say that this is the only way that they can do it, that they can discharge the water to clear out these tanks so they can continue with the process of decommissioning this ruined nuclear plant. It's going to happen slowly. It's going to take 30 or 40 years. There is bound to be more opposition. Already, Japan's government has been asking Beijing to repeal that ban on seafood and fish products in order to help the industry here. So there are also going to be a lot of politics at play as this plays out.
Very clearly. Janice Mackey-Freyer live for us there from Fukushima, Japan. Thank you so much. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, the Justice Department is suing SpaceX today over allegations it discriminated against refugees and asylum seekers when it was hiring people. The lawsuit says for about 4 years, between 2018 and 2022, SpaceX wrongly claimed that certain laws limited its hiring to only American citizens and lawful permanent residents, and that out of 10,000 hires at SpaceX, only 1 was an asylum seeker. The lawsuit says that hire only happened after the company was notified of the investigation against it. SpaceX, which of course is owned by Elon Musk there, has not responded to NBC's request for comment yet. Number 2, the man convicted of killing Kristen Smart more than 25 years ago has been hospitalized after he was attacked in a California prison, according to his lawyer. Officials say Paul Flores is in serious condition. They're still looking into what happened. Flores is serving 25 years to life for killing Smart, a case that captivated the nation for years. Number 3, FIFA is opening up an investigation into the head of the Spanish Soccer Federation. Remember we told you about this moment when Luis Rubiales kissed a player on the lips during Spain's Women's World Cup? The celebration of their victory? He's been getting a lot of backlash for it ever since. Rubiales has said he made a mistake, but FIFA said his actions, what he did, may violate its code. Number 4, Korean Air says it'll start weighing some of its passengers before flights domestically. It's part of a government program to help the airline collect data for just a couple weeks. Now, the airline says if you don't want to get on a scale, you can opt out if you're not comfortable with it. Number 5, the governor of Massachusetts announcing today that the state will start offering free community college for anybody 25 years and older. She says it's part of a push to try to get more people access to education and to invest in the workforce in Massachusetts. This program is also going to help people pay for any kind of books and supplies and fees, etc. So live look here outside the Fulton County Jail in Georgia. You can see on the right side of your screen, at least you just saw them, a whole bunch of cameras, members of the media lined up to see Donald Trump, who is expected to surrender. at that jail, his fourth indictment in 5 months. In the last 90 minutes, we saw his plane take off from New Jersey, so we know where he will be as his opponents in the 2024 primary are gaming out where they should head next. That's after the first primary debate in Wisconsin last night, with today a lot of people talking about Vivek Ramaswamy. He was a relative unknown just a couple months ago. His super PAC Today Now is out with a new ad talking about his platform, claiming he's creating, in their words, a new American revolution. Ramaswamy has been somebody who's been hugging, really, Mr. Trump. Chris Christie has not. And today, even though he got booed on stage last night because of his attacks on Donald Trump, he's leaning into it in a new interview with our Garrett Haake.
You know what you're up against here, trying to chip away at Donald Trump.
It is time to pick sides, and I've picked my side, and my side's on the side of the Constitution and on the side of law and order. And that's what made me laugh about some of the folks on the stage last night. They all say they're for law and order, but not for Donald Trump.
Day after a debate is interesting because it's in some ways like day one of the next phase of the campaign, right? Interestingly, tonight, the fundamentals remain a lot where they were 24 hours ago and where they've been for months, with Donald Trump, based on the polling, crushing the rest of the pack. This is even after the highest profile moment yet for these candidates.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. And I think really only Chris Christie made a serious effort to change that dynamic by going after Donald Trump on the debate stage. I suppose you could argue that Mike Pence did the same. But the reality is most of these candidates are trying to play the long game here a little bit. Survive in advance, keep building their polling, keep building their fundraising, and wait for opportunities to change the dynamic more aggressively. I mean, without Trump on the stage, there's just not as much you can do to try to take some of the shine off of him. And most of these candidates didn't even try. But I think, you know, it's funny being in the spin room afterwards last night. Every campaign declares victory. And in some sense, everybody did what they needed to do more or less tonight. You didn't see anybody completely collapse. I think especially Ron DeSantis, who had the biggest target on his back, was able to mostly stop the bleeding. And now we move on and start looking ahead to that debate at the end of September.
Who's going to be on that stage and who's not going to be on that stage?
Well, right now, Hallie, you're probably looking at 6 of the 8 candidates who are on the stage last night having already qualified. The 2 on the edges face the same problem they've always had. Doug Burgum and Asa Hutchinson still struggling to get much momentum in polling, still struggling to generate much fundraising enthusiasm. Burgum had to use a gimmick where he basically gave out gift cards. For every $1 donation, you could get a $20 gift card. He can do that. He's nearly a billionaire. It's one of the ways to kind of game the system here. But making sure that they're able to get over the hump will be challenging for candidates like Will Hurd on the graphic there, who failed to qualify for this debate. Building up more momentum, more name recognition in the intervening month without having been on the biggest stage yet is going to be a huge, huge challenge, Hallie.
So then what's the next thing, Garrett, for you and for our team there covering sort of the on-the-ground piece of the campaign? Is this just all about the sprint to Iowa, to New Hampshire, to Nevada, to South Carolina at this point?
Yeah, I mean, from talking to the other candidates and their teams over the last couple days, I think everybody's waiting to see if the circus atmosphere around the Trump arraignments and court appearances dies down enough so that traditional campaigning can break through. That's been the case a little bit in the early states. That's why you see other candidates with slightly better numbers in places like Iowa and New Hampshire than they have nationally. But if you look back over the last couple of months, it's almost been every week we've had some giant Trump-related headline, good or bad. It makes it almost impossible for anyone else to break through. If we get into a season where it's process-related, court dates moving back and forth, some of these campaigns are more optimistic that in that environment, traditional politics, remember that, might be able to make a little bit more of a difference. But again, you're tinkering around the edges right now when you've got a candidate who's 30 points ahead in most of these early polls.
Explain traditional politics, Garrett. I can't remember what that feels like. Garrett Haake, thank you very much live for us there from Milwaukee. Appreciate you. We'll talk again. Tonight, some intense thunderstorms are happening across the Great Lakes with something like 20 million people at risk. Look at this amusement park in northern Ohio. Pools of water reflecting the big storm clouds right above. In Michigan, some streets are starting to look like rivers. We've seen a bunch of rain falling today. For a couple of hours, Detroit's airport had to shut off access to one of its terminals because of flooding. At the same time, if it's not the rain, it's the heat that's gripping about a third of the country. Chicago today is officially tying a record for the hottest it's ever felt, like ever, since they started even recording these numbers. 118 degrees in that city. That's putting a lot of pressure on not just people, but resources like public transportation, like infrastructure. Schools are shutting down today. There's a concern about power outages. And trains in Chicago, they've got to slow down. They're under speed restrictions so that the tracks don't get quite as stressed and don't expand. That could end up being unsafe. Jesse Kirsch is joining us now. A real impact, not just on individuals, but on the system writ large because of this heat.
Yeah, and Hallie, what we like to say here in the Windy City is that it's always a little bit cooler by the lake, and I can tell you that right now I'm not that far from the lake, and it doesn't feel much cooler. It is hot out here right now. As you mentioned, this is more than just a basic nuisance. You talk about the trains being slowed down. There have been schools shut down in this area and across the region. There have been football practices, sports put on pause right as schools are getting back in session. Just take a look at some of the other stats we have here. Power outages as well. Schools in this area. And then, of course, an emphasis from cities like Chicago on cooling centers. The city also touting its splash pads, reminding people of ways that they can try to keep cool. So all of this has been going on for a couple of days here. It is really hot out, but there is some good news, at least for the Midwest, on the way. We're looking at things to cool off starting tomorrow. So fingers crossed it feels a lot better here tomorrow. But I can tell you right now, it's not just the heat, right? It's that mugginess. It's very humid. The air almost feels wet, really. It's just really gross out here right now.
Let me tell you, you don't have to talk to this Washingtonian about the humidity, Jesse. I get it. I feel it. The thing is, right now, if it's not the heat, right, it's the rain. You have those storms. You've had flooding in parts of the Midwest. We're looking at that all the way to western New York. What's the outlook on that front?
Yeah, so we're talking about 20 million people roughly in the Great Lakes region looking at severe weather this afternoon and evening. So that's something we're watching for. We know there's already been some flooding concerns in the Midwest in parts of Michigan and Ohio. There's a potential for more flooding in those two states later tonight into tomorrow. We're looking at potentially up to an inch, if not more than an inch of rain per hour. So something we're going to be keeping an eye on into the overnight hours, Hallie.
Jesse Kirsch live for us there in Chicago. Jesse, thank you. Stay cool, friend. We are learning in just the last hour that we'll get the results of a big United Auto Workers union vote tomorrow morning. They're deciding on whether to authorize a pretty big strike that could happen next month if talks with the big three car makers break down. Listen.
This is our generation's defining moment. We're fed up with the billionaire class and the corporate class taking everything and leaving us with scraps.
There's a clock on this. There is a timer. These 150,000 workers could end up walking in 3 weeks if they can't get to a deal with Ford, GM, and Stellantis, which used to be Chrysler. Workers in Detroit, look at this. They've actually done practice pickets just in case they do end up striking. Here's some of what they want. More money, a 46% pay raise over the next 4 years, a 32-hour work week that's paid at full time, and better benefits, too. Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver is joining us now. So listen, tomorrow morning, we thought maybe today we're going to get it tomorrow morning. It's going to be a big deal when it happens, but keep in mind that a strike authorization isn't the same thing as them walking off right away. There's kind of this baked-in couple of weeks where things could change.
Yeah, and there'll be intense negotiations back and forth. If the UAW workers choose to go on strike and vote in behalf of the union, they want all those benefits. They want their piece of the profits. They've seen record profits for GM and Stellantis over the past few years. They also see this transition to EV, and they're worried, just like a lot of other industries, about this transition to new technologies, what that's going to mean for their jobs going forward.
What does it mean for the car makers if these workers do authorize a strike?
Yeah, strikes are pretty painful for car makers. Back in 2019, GM faced a 40-day strike, cost almost $10 billion or so, then $3.6 billion, I should say. So there's estimates. If this goes on for something like 10 days, it could cost $5 billion to the automakers. But then there's the ripple effect, Hallie. The suppliers, the steel makers, the paint makers, all the people involved in the auto industry. A strike could be debilitating across the industry.
Have you ever seen a strike like this before? Or when was the last time that all the sort of three car makers were affected by something like this?
It's rare that you see the UAW target all three of the big U.S. automakers. This is the first time we've really seen that. Usually it's one at a time. Every 4 years, though, they go through this master agreement process to try to reach a deal, and then it kind of varies automaker to automaker. We're right now at the very tip here, at the very edge of what could be a pretty debilitating strike.
Well, let me ask you what it means, because anybody who's thought about buying a car, like a new car lately, knows those price tags are sky high. At least they feel like it. What's the consumer impact if a strike happens?
Think about it. No new supply, no new cars coming to market, less supply, already high prices and very high financing rates. Prices are likely going to go up.
Caleb Silver, great to see you. Thank you. We'll see how this goes. NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because It'd be tough to read or watch or listen to them all. Our foreign desk has done it for you. Here are some of what they're watching in a segment we call The Global. Out of Russia, a court in Moscow is extending the detention of Evan Gershkovich, that Wall Street Journal journalist, by 3 months. He's been jailed in Russia on spy charges since March. The U.S. has declared him wrongfully detained. The Journal calls this development deeply disappointing and says Gershkovich's attorneys will appeal. Out of the UK, hospital services there on pause today, offering only coverage for emergency care. That's because thousands of doctors are striking for 48 hours. They want more money. The British Medical Association says its members plan to do this again next month and the month after if the government doesn't start to negotiate. And out of India and the moon, remember the craft that landed on the South Pole of the moon yesterday? Well, now its rover is taking a moonwalk. It's going to roam around. It's going to do some experiments there for the next couple of weeks. India is the first country to have successfully landed something on the South Pole of the moon. That's super important because there's ice there, so that water could potentially mean more missions to come. Still to come here on this show. This is a live pick of where President Trump is expected to land in Atlanta sometime in the next little bit. He will surrender as part of the 4th criminal case brought against him just this year. We're going to take you there live coming up. Taking you back to our top story tonight, former President Donald Trump set to land in Atlanta sometime relatively soon. We know he's expected to surrender in his 4th arrest in the last 5 months. You're taking a live look at where he will be landing. The weather has pushed timing back a little bit. The former president had said he expected to be booked right around 7:30 p.m. It is 6:55 Eastern. Remember, he is heading now to the Fulton County Jail on charges that he tried to break the law in a push to try to overturn the legitimate results of Georgia's 2020 election. Remember, there was no evidence of widespread fraud in that state. Gabe Gutierrez and Vaughn Hilliard are both live for us on the ground in Atlanta. Gabe, I want to start with you and a sense of what it's like on the ground. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the former president's closest allies, has shown up there. We know his attorney is on the ground, his new attorney in Atlanta, too. Talk us through it.
Hey there, Hallie. Well, yes, we're here right outside of the Fulton County Jail. Let me set the scene for you. Several dozen, I guess, maybe several hundred, at least more than 100 of former President Trump's supporters have shown up here. Some have been here really throughout the day. And the sheriff's deputies here had put up extra barricades here just to, as a precaution throughout the day. So many members of the media had been gathered here. And now, as we're getting closer to the hour when former president is expected to surrender, you can see, how many people here have gathered. I've been speaking with some of them. One woman behind me drove here, Hallie, 4 hours from Nashville. She made a decision to come here at 9 a.m. this morning. And what we've been hearing from some of these protesters is that they just do not buy the charges against the former president. They think that this is political, and they're sticking by him no matter what at this point. And Hallie, I spoke with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who showed up here just a few moments ago, obviously acting as a surrogate for Donald Trump. Here's some of my conversation with her.
This is a witch hunt, and it shouldn't be happening. We are going to be launching an investigation into Fani Willis on the Judiciary Committee, and we're going to be looking at the collusion between the federal government, and the Department of Justice, and the state DAs.
How quickly should this trial happen?
It shouldn't happen at all.
Is this rhetoric dangerous?
Absolutely not.
So, Hallie, that was some of my conversation with Marjorie Taylor Greene, not backing down, defiant, saying this trial should never have happened in the first place. You see many of former President Trump's supporters here again. We're expecting the former president to come here. Timing pushed back, as you said, because of weather. He was late leaving New Jersey, but we expect him to get fingerprinted here. Still an open question whether we will see that mugshot, but we have been seeing those mugshots from his co-defendants that have been coming here throughout the past several days. Mark Meadows, of course, we got his mugshot a little earlier today. He's out on $100,000 bail. The former president set to get a $200,000 bail again when he arrives here, right in prime time, Hallie.
Gabe Gutierrez right in the thick of it. Vaughn Hilliard is also live for us in Atlanta, and we know that the former president is already previewing he's going to be out over on Newsmax tonight, presumably talking about the moment.
Right. I'm told by the campaign that he will be engaging in that in a conversation with a host from that right-wing outlet live after his formal booking here. This is going to be the beginning of Donald Trump's Georgia journey, not the political one, but the legal one. We expect that he is going to go through the normal booking process for any defendant. That's what the sheriff has said here in Fulton County. We expect that to include fingerprinting and potentially a mugshot. Secret Service has been keen on working with local authorities in other jurisdictions around his other 3 indictments to ensure that there are security protocols to keep the former president and leading frontrunner for the GOP nomination here in 2024 safe. You know, just as an anecdote, Hallie, I was told by one gentleman who walked out of the jail yesterday after being inside for multiple days on a suspended license that he was inside of, as he referred to it, the slammer with 40 other individuals when Rudy Giuliani walked by during his formal processing yesterday. So I think there's a lot of questions as to exactly what path Donald Trump will actually take once he arrives, but we expect him to land here in Atlanta any minute from now. He will then head from the airport en route to the jail just a few miles away for that process to begin, and then ultimately it'll be up to his defense counsel. He brought on a new lead attorney just today to begin to build his defense to take before a jury.
Vaughn Hilliard live for us in Atlanta. Vaughn, thank you. Our thanks to all of our team members, of course, who have been out there as we are seeing a plane, not sure if it's his plane, coming in for landing. We're going to have so much more coverage here tonight on NBC News Now, including special coverage. I'll be joined by my friend and colleague Tom Yamas a little bit later on. We'll have the biggest moments from what will be an evening that makes history. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. For now, Top Story picks it up as we speak.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.